You've been thinking about moving out for a while, and you're debating between buying versus renting a house, but you can't decide which option is better. Well, I did the math for you so you don't have to. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm a software engineer and I work in quant finance as a developer, so my day-to-day revolves around maths and money and computers, and this is exactly what we're going to do in this video. For this video, I coded a fairly easy simulation and I'll give you the code at the end so you can run your own numbers. Let's take as an example a house that cost the average home price in the United States around $400,000, and we'll compare it with renting a house with similar characteristics that I found in the same area, which rents for $24.95 a month. Having said that, let's dive right in. To buy a house, you'll probably need a mortgage. This mortgage usually needs a down payment of 5 to 20%, so you'll need to have around $20,000 to $80,000. Let's say that you can get one for $20,000 for this example. Here we're facing the first hidden cost of opportunity. If you were to invest this $20,000 in the stock market, for instance in the S&P 500, you'd be earning around 7 to 8% annually, adjusted for inflation. And you might say, well, my house is also earning some appreciation. And you'd be correct, but the appreciation you're getting is not beating at all the stock market and only slightly beating inflation, or around a 1% if we look from the 1900s. Besides the down payment, you'll have the actual mortgage payment, and it'll depend on the interest rate you get. For example, let's take the current 30-year rate in the United States at around a 7%. That'll give us a $25 and something a month mortgage, but getting a house is not only the mortgage payment, and there are many hidden costs. When buying, you need to pay a set of fixed costs that get wasted, like realtor fees and taxes for transactions, furniture for the house, maybe some remodeling, closing costs. For all of this, let's say you spend a 2% of the house value just as a fixed cost, and that comes at $8,000 in this example. Typically, you wouldn't have to pay for all of this if you were renting. Apart from this fixed cost, you also have a bunch of recurrent costs, like property tax and home insurance, commodity fee if you live in a closed neighborhood or flat, supplies like water and electricity bill, and something many people don't take into account, maintenance cost. Now, this one is hard to quantify, but most experts agree that around a 1% of the value of the house a year is spent maintaining your house. Now, let's put all of this together and make a couple of assumptions. Let's account for a household income of 80 grand a year after taxes, which, believe it or not, is not so far off from the American average. And let's say you get a 3% increase year on year on your salary. Let's say that you can live on 30% of your salary, that is groceries and car payments and going out, everything basically, without the mortgage. And then you can invest the rest, whatever is left, in the S&P 500. If we run the computation, you can see the evolution of your net worth in the next 30 years. So, to sum it up, you need $28,000 saved up, where $20,000 of those go towards your net worth plus home equity, and $8,000 is an expenditure. You pay a variable cost of around $40,000 a year in mortgage, tax, and costs of maintenance, where only a little fraction of your mortgage goes towards principal, so towards equity in the house and therefore to your net worth. How about we look at renting now? In this case, the numbers are really easy. We're going to assume that you have the same amount of money you need to pay up front if you were to buy. So that is those $28,000. Now in this case, instead of getting the house, you're going to put aside in the S&P 500 that down payment. The rest of the numbers are the same. So you live on 30%, then you pay rent, and you invest the rest. If we run the computation this time, you can see the numbers for this scenario. And if we see the two of them together, you can see that for this particular case, there's actually not much of a difference. If we play a bit with the numbers, we can see the situation changes. So for instance, let's say that the S&P has a horrible 30 years and it only returns a 3% instead of 8. Well, that's interesting. Now, buying is a better decision from the 16-year mark. What about if houses appreciate at a lot more than 1% during the next years, say 5%? Well, then buying is better after 20-something years. And what if your credit score is really bad and you cannot get a mortgage for 7% and you can get one for 9%? Well, it doesn't look very good for buying now, does it? So feel free to play with these numbers and take your own conclusions for your own country and your specific needs. But if you want to know mine, there are 3 important points that I want to take out of this. Number 1, the difference between buying and renting is not that impactful on your net worth in the typical scenario. Second, renting is a far more flexible alternative if your future is somewhat uncertain, unless you know for sure that you want to live in the same city for the next of your life. Renting gives you the flexibility to switch places without much friction. If things go your way, you can always move to a bigger and better house. If they don't go your way, you're not stuck with a 30-year mortgage that you cannot afford. And third, if you made it this far into the video, please leave a like and comment your opinion below on this topic, which I know is fairly controversial. That's all for today, and I hope you learned something valuable while watching, as I did while creating it. See you in the next one.